You're listening to the weekly Parsha podcast with Ari Goldwag, recorded with Hashem's never-ending assistance in Ramat B'Shemesh Israel 5778, 2017. This week's Parsha is Parsha's Vayigash. We have the culmination of the story, 22 years of history of the Jewish people. The culmination where Judah stands up for his brother Benjamin, in the face of this Egyptian tyrant. And Yosef finally reveals himself to his brothers, and they return to Eretz Yisrael, to the land of Israel, and tell their father Yaakov Avinu about the fact that Yosef is still alive and that he's the leader in Egypt. And the Jewish people descend to the land of Egypt, and so begins their time in exile outside of the land of Israel for 210 years. Now, what's amazing and interesting, which I'd like to try to understand, is that the midrash speaks about this final interaction between Yehuda and Yosef and the Jewish people descending to Egypt. It brings verses. I'm going to read it to you soon inside because it's really interesting, beautiful the way the midrash speaks. It brings verses that refer to the future Geulah of the Jewish people, the redemption of the Jewish people, the final redemption, the Messianic age. It uses those verses in regards to this final coming together of Yehuda and Yosef, the 12 tribes, Yaakov Avinu, the descent of the Jewish people to Egypt. There is an aspect here of Geulah, of redemption. And of course, the question that pops out for me, and maybe for you as well, as we learn these ideas together, is that it's very interesting, or it's perhaps challenging to understand, why is it that the midrash speaks about verses of Geulah, of redemption, when it's speaking about the beginning of Galus, the beginning of exile. What is the concept of redemption? What is the concept of Geulah? How does it relate to our story? How does it relate to us in our times, in the present time? Okay? So I'd like to read with you together some midrashim. It's really cool, so listen up. This is in Parshat Tzadihei, in section 95, the first section within that section. Ves Yehuda sholach lefonav. The verse tells us that after the brothers returned and told Yaakov that Yosef was in Egypt, so Yaakov sent Judah ahead of everyone else, and our Chazal say to establish yeshivas, to establish a place for the Jewish people to sojourn when they were in Egypt, etc. So, Ves Yehuda sholach lefonav, says the midrash Ksiv. The midrash brings a verse in Isaiah, chapter 65, verse 25, which is speaking about the future time, the Messianic age, and it says, Ze'ev v'taleh yiru ki echad. The wolf and the sheep, they will graze as one. No longer, in the future time, no longer will a wolf try to eat a sheep. The sheep will not be in danger from the wolf. V'aryeh kabakar yachal teven. And a lion, just like cattle, it shall eat from the straw. It will no longer be carnivorous. Animals will no longer be carnivorous. They will not attack each other. They will live in amazing harmony in the times of the Messianic age. This verse can be taken literally, and this verse is also a mashal. It's also an analogy for the fact that those who, in our times and throughout history, human beings who have interacted with negativity, with a warlike type of behavior, we won't have any war anymore. Lo yisa goy doesn't bring this verse here, but lo yisa goy al goy cherev, they will not raise up sword against each other. They won't learn war anymore. There will be a time of peace. Bayurei, says the midrash, an amazing and interesting thing. Listen to this, because it's going to teach us about what the Messianic age is going to look like. What do we have to look forward to? Anything that Hashem has caused a blemish in this world, God is going to cure in the future time. Those who are blind will be cured. They'll be able to see. Shenemar, as the verse says, this is also a verse in Isaiah, chapter 35, verse 5. Then the eyes of the blind shall be opened. And those who are unable to walk, they'll be cured. Shenemar, the verse says, it's the next verse there in chapter 35, As yadali ka'ayel piseach. Then a person who is lame shall skip along like a doe. V'saroin lishoin ilaim. And those who are mute, their tongue will say praise. They will say glad. They will sing. Okay, so in the future time, anything that's broken, anything that's not in a perfect state will be fixed. Very interesting. The midrash tells us that the way that a person left the world, right, when a person passes away in this world, if a person was lame when he passed away, or if a person was blind when he passed away, that's the way he's going to return. In the times of Tchias HaMesim, in the future, so we're going to have a revival of the dead. The dead are going to come back to life, as is described in Ezekiel, in the chapter on the dry bones. That's going to happen in the future time. So all those who are dead are going to come back to life, but they're going to come back the same way that they left the world. A person who died and he was blind will return, and he'll be blind. When a person, if he was deaf when he died, he will come back deaf. If he was mute, he'll return mute. Midrash says something else interesting, that the same way that he leaves the world, if a person left the world and he had clothing on, or a certain type of clothing, so he will return in that kind of clothing. And the Midrash, I'm going to actually skip a little bit here, but the Midrash brings a proof to the fact that there's spiritual clothing, so to speak, in the upper worlds and upper realms. Shmuel Hanavi, Samuel, when he was brought back, when his spirit was brought back, he was seen in his clothing, in the special clothing that he wore when he was alive. Vilama. So the Midrash says, why is that? Why is it that when he comes back in the same state? Why doesn't he come back? Why doesn't Hashem cure him already when he returns? Because when a we don't want people to say, look, when the person was alive, Hashem didn't cure him. Only after they died did Hashem cure him. We don't want people to say that. Rather, part of it is that people will think it's not the same person. Look, if everyone knew and identified a person as being a blind person or being a deaf person, but they come back and all of a sudden they're able to see or be able to hear, they would think this is not the same person. So what Hashem does, Amar HaKadosh Baruch Hu, let them return the way that they left the world. And then Hashem says, I will restore them to, or I will cure them of their ailments. No one else has that power. No one else has created except for me, says God. Verse in Isaiah chapter 43, verse 10. I'm going to be the one who's going to cure them. Amazing thing the Midrash tells us, really interesting. The animals as well will be cured. Shneimar. What does it mean, cured in this case? It may mean also in regards to if they have any physical ailments, but beyond that, they're going to be cured of their carnivorous nature, of their desire to cause other animals harm. So, as the verse tells us, that the wolf and the lamb will graze as one. They will all be herbivores. And I believe that human beings will also return to a state of no longer eating meat, as it was until the times of Noach. Hakol misrapim. Everything is cured. Mi shehevi mak alakol ein misrapi ela v'nachash afar lachmai. Now, the only exception to this is the one who brought this great blemish to the entire world. Who was the one who brought the blemish to the entire world? It was the Nachash, the snake. Because the snake caused Adam to eat from the Eitz Hadas, to eat from the tree of knowledge, thereby causing death to be brought upon the world, and all of reality to lose its state of perfection, to lose its proper way of being, and to fall into this degenerated or degenerative place, as it is today. So who is the cause of that? It was the Nachash, the snake. Therefore, the snake will never be returned to his previous state. That's what the midrash says. And it's also interesting that Yosef mentions in explaining what's going on here, that when Adam HaRishon sinned, he brings it from, or maybe it's the Maharzuna. I have multiple sources. I've read the different commentaries here, that there's a Chazal, our sages tell us that after Adam HaRishon, after the first man ate from the Eitz Hadas, from the forbidden fruit, so he actually gave of that fruit to all of the animals. All the animals also partook of the forbidden fruit, and therefore they lost their place, their state of grace, their state of highness. That was lowered. Okay? Lama Shehu Arid Habrius La'afar, because the cause of all of the problems, why did all the animals end up dying? It was because of the Nachash, the snake. So therefore he doesn't return. Davar Acher. Now the midrash comes to us and speaks about our verse. It speaks about how this verse, which speaks about Mashiach, is actually also speaking, or I don't know if it's also, or maybe it's only. We can discuss that, try to understand that. But it's also speaking about our story. Ze'ev v'taleh, Ze'ev ze Binyamin. It speaks about the fact that the wolf and the sheep, they reside together. They go and they graze together in the fields. So who is the wolf? Says the midrash, the wolf is Binyamin. V'taleh l'shvatim. The wolf we know is Binyamin because the verse refers to him as Binyamin Zev Yitraf. Binyamin is like a wolf that goes to find its food. So Binyamin is the wolf, and the sheep are the other shvatim, are the other tribes. Shenemar, as the verse says in Jeremiah chapter 50, verse 17, Sep Zur Yisrael Yiru Ke'echad. The spread out sheep of the people of Israel, they shall all join together, and they will graze as one. So we see who are the sheep that are grazing. They're going to come together in the times of Mashiach, in the times of the Messiah. The Jews will return to their homeland. They will gather back together. But we refer to them as sheep. Now, so there's a state of Geulah, there's a state of redemption where all of the sheep come back together and they graze together with the wolf. Who's the wolf? Binyamin, like we said. Who are the sheep? The Jewish people, the other tribes. Amosai, Kshiyar, Binyamin, Imayim, Vayakov, Emer Lahem, the first time they were separated, right? The wolf was separated from the sheep. The wolf was left behind with his father. That was Binyamin, was left behind with Yaakov Avinu. He didn't let him go down. When they came down the second time, so they took Benjamin with them, and they were protecting him. By Joseph, it says that he had to lift up his eyes. He had to stretch out to see. Oh my gosh, there's Benjamin. Why is it necessary for Yosef to lift up his eyes to be able to crane his neck to see him? Because, as I'm unfortunately explaining here, the brothers were protecting him. They were surrounding him. Okay, so he was surrounded there. So Yosef, the verse says. Okay, I'm sorry, I said that right. Now, Aryeh Ze Yehuda, the verse also says, as we said before, as we quoted, you have the wolf and the sheep together, and you have the lion behaving like cattle and eating straw. So who is this lion? Aryeh Ze Yehuda. It's a reference to Judah. Gur Aryeh Yehuda, we find the verse refers to Judah as a lion. Kabakar, the verse says he's going to be like cattle. Who is the cattle? Kabakar Ze Yosef, it's a reference to Joseph. The verse refers to him as an ox, which is cattle. Nimtzu oichlem ki achas. So the verse tells us they were all eating together. At the second time when they returned, and in last week's Parsha, so we have them all eating together, all in that same place, all grazing together, so to speak. We have the lion, we have the sheep, we have the cattle, we have the wolf. We have all of these aspects are coming together. All these different aspects of the Jewish people. So that is why Yaakov Avinu felt comfortable, as Meforshim explained. Yaakov Avinu felt comfortable sending down Judah. Originally, when Judah brought back the kesenes, hapasim, the special coat of Joseph, and he said, Hakerna. He said to Yaakov Avinu, to Jacob, do you recognize this coat? Whose coat is this? And Jacob saw the coat and he said, Tarif Taraf Yosef. He said, Joseph was killed. He thought, as the Meforshim explained, he thought that Judah had killed him. That's what he assumed. Or perhaps at a deep subconscious level, not clear exactly what it's saying. But until this moment, Yaakov was cautious. He wouldn't have sent Yehuda down to be alone with Yosef because he suspected him of having killed Yosef. But now that Yaakov saw that everything came back into a state of perfection, of love, of the lion with the lamb, the lambs with the wolf, the lions with the cattle, everyone's in a state of love, so to speak. So at this point, Yaakov is not afraid to send down Yehuda. He sends him down. Yehuda can now go down and pave the way for the Jewish people to descend to Egypt. Now, there's another midrash which I'm not going to read inside, which also speaks about these verses in terms of the verses. It speaks about our verses, which speak about the completion of the story here, the coming together of the brothers, and uses the references of the verses that have to do with Mashiach, has to do with the Messiah, the final redemption. And so, like we started at the beginning, I want to understand what is the meaning here, what is the idea here, what is the depth of the fact that the Torah, the midrash, there's a redemption here. What is the redemption here? It seems like there's an exile here. What is the redemption here? What is the idea of Geulah, of redemption? How does that apply here? How does that apply to the Messianic age? How does that apply to us? Because we're looking at the beginnings of the redemption in our times. So how do we see that, or how do we understand that? What is the concept of Geulah? What is the concept of redemption? So I think that in our medrash, we see the foundation of what is Geulah. The first part of the medrash speaks about the fact that when Mashiach comes, all the animals are going to be back to the original state of Adam Rishon Kodam Achei, before the sin of Adam, when the animals were not carnivorous, when they did not attack each other. The human beings are going to be back in a state of perfection, physical perfection. There won't be any blemishes in them. There won't be any sickness. There won't be any blindness. There won't be any lameness. All of these things will be brought back. That's the key here. That's what Geulah is. Geulah is where everything is brought back, returned to its original state, to its state of perfection. That's what Geulah means. Geulah means things are brought back to where they should be, to where they were originally, until they fell from that state of perfection. That's what Geulah is. Mashiach, the Messianic age, is not new. It's not a new state. It's a return to the original state, before Adam HaRishon sinned. That's what Mashiach is. That's what this midrash is telling us. It's very clear. It's very clear. Okay, so that's and when we look at a person who's blind, he has eyes but he can't see. So it's very clear the way it's supposed to be, but it's not. He's blind, and he needs to be returned to that state. That's what Geulah is, right? He doesn't come back to life being in a state when the Tchias HaMesim occurs. He doesn't come back to life in the state of perfection already. Geulah means a return to the original state. We recognize that we've lost the original state, and we return to that original state. That is Geulah. Yosef HaTzadik and his brothers, 22 years before, they were in the perfect state already. They didn't accept it, but they were in that perfect state. Yosef had these dreams, which represented the fact that he was the leader of the Jewish people, represented the fact that he was the one who was supposed to guide them and help them, right? He brought negative reports to the father. Why? Because he understood his role in the Jewish people, which was to show them, to guide them, to help them be who they're supposed to be, which is what he continues to do throughout our story. And this is why he brings them through this whole difficult saga. That is Yosef. That is his role. That is who he's supposed to be. That is lost. They deny the fact that that's who he's supposed to be. They're not willing to accept it at the beginning of the story. Ultimately, Geulah occurs. Redemption occurs. Things return to their state of the way things are supposed to be. Now, does that look like Geulah? Does that look like the Jewish people are in Eretz Yisrael, the land of Israel? In this case, no. In this case, although there is a Geulah, there is a redemption. The redemption here just means that the Jewish people return to their state of being in a perfected state, in the way it's supposed to be, with Yosef at the helm. He's the tzaddik, he's the righteous one, he's the one who knows how to guide them to spiritual perfection, to achieve that which they need to do, to rectify that which they need to rectify. That's his purpose, that's his role. And interestingly, and this is actually a completely different discussion, but interestingly, he does it as the leader, not just of the Jewish people. He does it as the leader of the entire world. which is, someone sent me an email yesterday, Jordan Shabatovsky sent me an email asking, why is it that Yosef has to reveal himself when Yehuda says, the midrash speaks about this conversation, which is not in the Torah, where Yehuda and the brothers say they're going to destroy Egypt. They're ready to destroy Egypt. Yosef is, at that moment when he sees they're going to destroy Egypt, he has to stop it. He has to reveal himself. But what is the idea behind that? Because Yosef has to be the leader over Egypt in order to be the leader and Egypt represents the entire world at that time. So Yosef is the leader of Egypt, and then he's the leader of the Jewish people. Okay, so that's the function. He can't be the leader over the Jewish people unless or we need both of them to function simultaneously. The Jewish people need to lead the world, right? Yosef is the tzaddik, is the Mashiach of his generation. We're coming into a state of perfection for his generation, which is reminiscent of, or really, it's the same as the concept of Mashiach. He can't allow them to destroy Egypt, because the Jewish people need to lead the world. Right? That's our purpose, and that's what Yosef's purpose is, and he's functioning in that way. That's what Mashiach is going to do as well. He's not just going to lead the Jewish people, he's going to lead the entire world. The Jewish people are going to be the leaders of the entire world. Okay, so that's just that point. But the idea here is that Yosef HaTzadik, he's coming into a state of returning. That's what Geulah means, redemption. And I thought, and this is my own chiddush, but my own novelty, but the word Goal, the root of the word Goal, which means to redeem, is Gimel Aleph Lamed, those three letters, Gimel Aleph Lamed. The letter Gimel in Sefer Yetzirah, in other places, represents the aspect of Gaiva, separation, ego, where we separate from each other. The letter Gimel is also Gomal, which means, Lihigamel means to be weaned, to be separated from your source of life, to be separated, to feel separate. When a person is egotistical, he feels separate. He can do it himself. Right? Gimel represents Gaiva, represents separateness. Aleph, the letter Aleph represents unity. It's the first letter of the Hebrew alphabet, and also is it's the same letters as Pella, which means awesomeness, exaltedness, something which is beyond understanding. That's the unity of all of reality, is the letter Aleph. The letter Lamed means to learn. Lamad means to learn. Gimel Aleph Lamad. What is Geulah? Geulah is when Gimel, the separateness, the brokenness, Aleph Lamad, learns that it's supposed to be in a state, back into the state of oneness, back into the state of unity, back into its original state. Aleph is the first letter. It's the original aspect. So we have to go through this whole story, 22 years of challenge, 22 years of difficulty, 22 years of this whole process coming along in order to reach the point where we return to the original state, to the Aleph, and the Gimel, the separateness, the defiance, learns about the fact that we're really to partake of unity. That's what Geulah is. It's a return to original intended state. So that's what we're speaking about here. That's the Geulah here. It may not be the final, ultimate Geulah. It was the Geulah of returning to the way things are meant to be, to the way things are supposed to be within the Jewish people, and also within Egypt itself. So I want to bless you, and I ask you to please bless me. Hashem should help us, that we should be able to be zecha, to merit, to understand what are the things that we are missing. Where are the places that we are spiritually sick, perhaps, or spiritually missing, spiritually blemished. Hashem should help us that we should experience our own personal Geulah, our own personal redemption, which means that Hashem should give us the guidance and the spiritual understanding to return to the place of our spiritual perfection, which is possible for each and every one of us. Thank you so much for listening. Have a wonderful Shabbos. This podcast was made possible through the gracious donations of listeners like you. For more podcasts like this, please visit www.arigoldwag.com or search on iTunes Ari Goldwag.